What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Mount Mograph. In today's video, we're going to be doing Summit 31 and modeling this fresh cookie inside Cinema 4D. We'll be using HDRs to light our scene in a very realistic manner, and also physical sky to get nice glow to our scene. I'll also show you today how to use noises and multiple noises on a layer in your bump maps to create very nice looking textures on your objects as well as colors. So what you're going to need if you'd like to follow on this video exactly today is going to be the rough wood texture that can be downloaded in the video description if you'd like to, and also this folder of HDRs, which is high dynamic range images, which we'll be able to put into our luminance channel to light our scene. So let's jump into Cinema 4D and get this started. Let's go up into our primitives and select a sphere. In your attribute manager, go to your type and go and set it to a octahedron. And let's turn our segments up to 150 just to give us enough polygons down the road to play with. So let's press C on our keyboard to make our sphere editable, and go into our side view by pressing F3 on our keyboard and select polygon mode. Press V to bring up your quick selection menu and go and select a rectangle selection, and unclick this only select visible elements, and basically click and hold and just cut this sphere in half if you can. So that looks good to me, and I'll delete that. Next, I'm going to go and highlight just this very bottom row. I'll actually go into edge mode first, sorry about that. So click and hold and just select this bottom row. It should turn orange. If you go and press F1 on your keyboard back into your perspective view, you'll see a bottom ring is highlighted for us. So let's right click and go down to close polygon hole, and just basically it's going to snap into place eventually. You just have to position it right. There we go. So I drew a polygon on the bottom of the sphere, it's going to be the bottom of our cookie. So let's go into our live selection mode, or actually our point mode, and press Command A. And as you can see, we have all these extra points that are not being used, but they're leftovers from when we just cut our object. So let's right click and go down to Optimize to clean up those points. And now we'll be able to move forward with this video. So select your sphere layer and let's call this layer cookie. Press T to bring up your scale tool, and let's just make this a little bit more of a cookie shape. So that's looking pretty good to me. Let's go and create a texture for our cookie. So I'm going to double click in my material manager and go into my matte, and I'm going to actually call this layer cookie because that's what we're trying to make. So first let's go into our texture and let's click this selection called layer. So we'll be able to stack noises to create very nice looking colors. So I'm going to click that and go into my little layer here and click shader and go down to noise. I'm going to click into my noise. It turns into just like folders and folders, but it makes sense if you use it a lot. So let's go into our noise for this first layer, and let's go and select Naki, which is this one right over here. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to probably turn my global scale up just a bit. So maybe let's go 240. And as you can see on this window here, it's a little bit more dispersed. And let's also turn our delta just down to 40, and that's gonna just minimize the difference between the black and white colors. So in my color 1, I'm gonna set this to a nice dark brown for this cookie, make it look delicious, and maybe a lighter brown for the second color. So if I close out of this right here and drop this cookie onto my cookie sphere and press Command R, you're going to see we're starting to already get like this marbled texture or color on top of our cookie. So double click back into your cookie, click back into your layer, and let's add another color layer. So I'm going to click my shader and go down to noise and click into my noise, and I'm going to set this one to electric. So I'm going to click right here and go over to the option that is right here. This is electric, and this is even more marbled, and let's go and select 2 more brown looking colors. So I'm going to do just a different variation because we want this cookie to look cool, you know, and most cookies don't have two colors. There's a lot of different color tones in there, so just grab some different stuff, and let's turn our global scale up quite a bit. So I'm going to go to 550, and this is just going to make it very big. And let's go back into our color, and I'll just move this window and Command R, and we'll see how our cookie color is looking so far. It's starting to look pretty nice. So let's go into our luminance channel Actually, don't go to luminance yet. I'll save that for later. We'll go into our reflection channel and turn that on. And just because it just came out of the oven, there's probably some butter or oil. So let's just turn our brightness up very little bit, maybe to 4%, and we're going to get this nice little glow. And let's go down to our bump map, and this is where the magic is going to happen. So click your bump layer. I'm also going to turn off our specular layer. We don't really need that. So in your bump layer, let's go to texture and go down to layer and click into your layer. And actually turn this up to 100% because we're going to really want to see our changes. So click into this layer and let's go and click a shader and noise once again. Click into your noise and let's select a stipple effect, which is down at the bottom right here, and click that. And so if I do Command R, you're going to see our cookie is starting to get a texture. But let's modify this texture a little bit to make this more interesting. So I'm going to want this stipple effect to be our like large cuts in our cookie. So I'm going to turn my global scale up to like 650. Do Command R to see what it's doing, and as you can see, we have creases in our cookie. But I'd like to see some deeper creases in this cookie instead of these very minimal ones. So I'm going to go into my delta and press 240, and now do Command R, and our cuts are going to be quote unquote deeper into the cookie. So that looks good. Click on your bump layer, click back into your layers, and go and add another shader. So I'm going to click that and go down to noise, click into my noise, and I'm going to select the texture of blistered turbulence if I can find it. Let's see, displaced turbulence, blistered turbulence. That's the one I want. And I'm going to turn my global scale. Actually, I might leave it with that. Yeah, that looks good. I'm just going to turn my delta down to maybe 60, so it's a little bit more of a subtle effect. That looks good. So I'm going to go back into my bump. I'm going to click into my layers. Sorry if this is getting confusing. And I'm going to turn my noise on the second effect to like 35, so it's not as noticeable, but it's still there. So this looks pretty good, but it also just looks like a boring wafer. So we're gonna have to add a couple more effects to really get this cookie to look good. So with your cookie layer selected, go up into your deformers, holding Alt, select a displacer. Actually, that's gonna be holding Shift, select a displacer, and this will make it a child of our cookie. So go into your shading tab, go down to shader and select a noise and click into your noise. And what we're gonna do is use an FBM. So that would be, where is this? The texture right here, FBM, and select that. And as you can see, now our cookie has a whole bunch of bumps on it, which is starting to look kind of cool. So I'm gonna go into my global scale on this and maybe turn this up quite a bit. So I'm thinking like 1,300. Press enter, and now you can see our cookie has some like you know, this looks like mom scooped it into a pan and baked it for us, so that looks cool. And let's maybe turn our delta down too, because those like dips are pretty intense. So I'm just gonna smooth that out a little bit by doing 50% of the delta, and now the difference isn't as noticeable. So I think this is looking pretty good right now. So let's click our displacer and go over into our object, and let's just turn maybe our intensity down a little bit and just round our cookie back out because we were kind of losing that shape. If you'd like to, you can really crank this up and get some really crazy looking stuff. But I don't know, I'm gonna set it to 8 just to get, you know, this cookie's baked, so that looks good. All right, so our cookie is made. Let's go and create the chocolate chips that are going to be on top of our cookie. So I'm gonna go and click into my primitives and select a cone. I'm gonna move this cone up, press T to bring up my scale, and just scale this down. Click my cone. I'm gonna call this chalk chip for a chocolate chip. That's an abbreviation, guys. And click into my attribute manager and go into my height, and I'm just gonna turn my height down to maybe 26.8, I guess, and I'm going to turn my height segments up to 30 and my rotation segments up to 45. Let's go into our caps tab, and we're going to click bottom, and this is going to round out our cookie, or our chocolate chip. Man, I got used to saying cookie. So I'm going to turn my radius up just a little bit, give it a nice rounded look to everything, and turn my cap segments up and my fillet segments up, which is actually going to be the bottom, until it looks a little bit more even. And that looks pretty good. So that's nice and smooth. Now what I'd like to do with this chocolate chip is add a texture to it. So I'm gonna create another material, double click in my material manager, click into my matte, and let's call this chocolate. And on our first one, we're going to do is go into our color and let's select a Fresnel. And this is going to give a nice gradient on our material. So I'm going to click into my Fresnel, and on this side, I'm going to make it a darkish gray, somewhere around there. And on the other side, I'll keep it to a black. So that looks good. Let's go into our reflection because chocolate kind of is shiny after it came out of the oven. So let's turn this to a nice melty 14% and click that on. And let's maybe go into our bump map here, and let's add a slight bump to it so the chocolate is a little bit rounded out as well. So I'm going to go in, select just a regular noise. We don't need to layer anything, and I'm going to turn this up to 100%. Click in there, and let's select a Gnocchi texture. So right here, and let's turn our global scale maybe up to like 350, and this is just going to give us a very subtle effect. So I'm going to drop this onto my chocolate, and as you can see, we're starting to get a pretty nice look. I might even go into my specular channel and set my mode to colored, and just set my color to a black as well. Let's see how that looks. That looks nice. Okay, so with our chocolate chip, I'm just going to, I messed around before with I'm going to scale that down, but I was messing around before with like using a cloner object to clone on the surface, but it didn't look too perfect. So I don't know, I ended up just placing these chocolate chips on here by myself, which really was not that bad, you know. So let's just go into our top view. So press F2 on your keyboard, hold Command, and let's just drag out a couple copies of our chocolate chip and just give it a nice little spread, you know, like nothing too crazy. And then we'll go back into our normal view and just position these a little bit better. So I'm sure there's a better way to do it. I kind of liked this because I was able to tweak it later wherever I wanted to, like just move an object just a little bit. So that worked out well, and I was kind of happy with that. But yeah, you don't have to do it like this. It's kind of an annoying step, but it's not that bad. So I'm just gonna position these a little bit using my rotation and move tools. So just T and R on your keyboard. Oh, that one moved a little bit funny, and this really doesn't take too long. I'm just trying to match the curvature of my cookie. So yours might be a little bit different depending on what your bump map did, but this should work out pretty well. So I'm just going to continue placing these cookies just for these chocolate chips on my cookie just for another second, and we will get into the lighting portion of this video. And am I missing any? Yes, I am. So I'll grab this guy, tilt it. Yeah, I wanted, I once again tried to put up a modeling video actually yesterday, actually a rigging video for the low poly deer, except I did not record the video as I was doing it, and I just was a little annoyed that I forgot to press record. So I went through this whole video and didn't record it. So I do have that actually coming soon. I'm just gonna have to wait like another day before I try to put that video up again. So sorry about that, guys. And that's why I made a cookie, because I was sad. So I needed some cookies and I didn't want to bake them. So I thought it'd be cool just to model a quick cookie. All right, so let's see how this is looking. I'll do Command R, and as you can see, this is with no extra lights in the scene. We have a pretty nice looking object already. So I'm gonna just maybe drag out another chocolate chip and just get a little bit more of an even spread. Make Nabisco proud, or whatever that company is. And yeah, that looks a little bit better. It was just kind of empty over there. So this is kind of why I like placing them myself, because I can tweak them if it doesn't look right. And I mean, I'm still not 100% happy with it, but I know no one wants to see me place chocolate chips for another 4 minutes or something. So let's select all of our chocolate chips here, and just put them into a null object together. So do Alt G on your keyboard, and let's call this choc chips. And then I'll place both of these objects. Actually, what I'll do is I'm just going to delete all these materials and just put this on my main material just to keep a nice clean hierarchy. All right, so let's drag our selection marquee over both these objects and do Alt G on our keyboard, and I'm just going to call this cookie. And there we go, we have a cookie modeled. So let's go and create a table. So what I'm going to do is just click and select a floor, and if I do Command R, our cookie looks like it's sitting on just boring gray, and I didn't like that, so I wanted to put a table here. So remember, on our desktop, in the video description, if you'd like to, you can download this rough wood texture that will really make our scene come to life, and I think it looks great. And also show you a really cool trick. So I'm going to click in my material manager here and double click in there, and in my color channel, I'm just going to drag this rough wood texture onto my texture and say no. And now we have the texture on top of our color here. I'm also going to turn my reflection up to maybe like 8% because it's going to have a nice smooth color. It's a very polished table. And I'm going to drop this material onto our floor. So if I do Command R, we're not going to have a cookie sitting on this floor with these awful tiles. So I'm not liking that. So I'm going to click into my attribute manager, click my material here, and I'm going to set my my mode to seamless, and let's see if that looks better. So I'll do Command R, and hopefully this looks a little bit better. Yeah, it smoothed it out. It's not that noticeable, and that should be just enough for us because we're not going to actually see the floor that much. So now that we have our floor here, if we do Command R, you're going to notice that the floor looks a little bit flat. You know, it looks literally just like a boring image. So I don't like that. So what I'm going to do is just open Photoshop. If you haven't opened it, I'm using Creative Cloud, but this will work in any of them. And we're going to create our own bump map. So I'm just going to drop my rough wood texture into Photoshop here. And bump maps are super easy to use. What did I just do with my window? Okay, well, I did something stupid with my window. It's now positioned all funny. Here we go. Maybe. Nope, it's not snapping in place. That's fun. Anyway, so they're really easy to use. You just have to go and click Image, Adjustments, and go and select black and white. Say OK, go to Image, Adjustments, Brightness and Contrast. Turn your contrast up to maybe like 49%, and also turn your brightness up to 33 just so you get a nice variation in color tone. And just do Shift Command S to do a save as, and I'm just going to call this -B and W for black and white. So bump maps are based off the difference between the black and white color tones. So if I was to click into my mat here that I'm going to actually call table, let's just go and select our bump map and select that and drop our black and white wood texture that I just saved to the desktop onto our texture and say no. And nothing's going to happen right off the bat, nothing that you'll be able to see. But now if I do Command R, our table all of a sudden is going to have a much more texture to it. I'll do a quick comparison. So if I select no bump and do Command R, you're going to see our image looks very flat. But just by adding this really easy image to it that we made in Photoshop, I'll click my bump map on. I really cranked it up just so you could see the difference. You kind of have like shadows in all the grain anywhere that the black was. So I think that's a good way to create a little bit more realistic textures. And I'm going to only turn this to 24. It's cool to have, but you know, you don't need to go nuts with it. All right, so now we got our floor. Our next step is going to be making use of our HDR. So I'm going to actually grab my cookie and just scale this down. It's pretty big. So I'm going to do that, and let's see if it's still looking all right. Yeah, this looks good. Okay, so with our cookie and floor made, I'm going to go up into my environments, or my objects here, and select a sky object. So in your sky object, let's click and create another matte, and I'm going to call this sky. Okay, so first what you're going to do to use an HDR is unclick your specular and unclick your color and click your luminance channel. HDRs are high dynamic range images, and that basically means that they have a lot more colors in them. So you can use them to light scenes and you'll get all the different color tones of the environment. So I recommend using them for future projects. So in this folder, I'm going to use HDR31, which I did like. So I'm just going to drag that in there and say no. And as you can see, this is what the image is. It's just like a wood studio. This folder, this dude made them. Some of them are all right. They're pretty basic, but they have some nice colors to them. So I'm going to just leave this luminance set to 100. Actually, I'll do 110. Why not? And if I do Command R, we shouldn't see any change in our image. So that's an issue, and the reason is HDRs only affect your environment if you go into your settings, and let's turn on ambient occlusion if you don't have it turned on. They only affect your scene if you have global illumination turned on. So I'm going to turn on my global illumination and do Command R, and now it's going to calculate the scene. So let's see what's happening. So the only light I added to the scene was our sky object, and here it is. So our scene is now looking a little bit flat, but don't worry about it. We're going to fix this. So first, let's go into our secondary method here and set our secondary method to quasi Monte Carlo. And let's turn our, actually that should do it. So let's see how that's looking. Just another second. Global illumination is slow. All right, so our cookie is a little flat. I would like to see the scene is going to have like a real variation in color now that we have our HDR. Oh, actually, I should probably put our HDR on our sky. I was not even changing anything. So do Command R, and now you can see, I was like, this still looks a little bit flat. So this is going to now calculate on the environment. Wow, I totally blanked there. I actually thought I was seeing a change too. So as you can see, now our chocolate chips have the glow, and if you really pay attention, you can see that it's actually from the environment. So this is looking pretty cool. But we kind of lost some of that texture that we spent time making on our cookie. So I'm gonna go and select a physical sky and just rotate this over so it's coming on an angle. I'm gonna also rotate this down a little bit just to like catch the shadows of our object. And I'm gonna go into my physical sky and go to my sun settings, and I'm gonna turn my color saturation up a little bit and get more of some yellow tones, and you can do a preview right here if you'd like to see. So I'm gonna set mine to 132, and let's do Command R and see what we're getting now. Hopefully it's better. Sometimes it's a little tweaking. That's how lights always work. I might have to like scale up my object or scale it down to get the bumps back. All right, so it's looking a little bit better. I actually think I will scale back up my cookie. I shouldn't have changed it because we based our material off the size of the cookie. So that's something I wish changed dynamically, but it doesn't. So let's just see if this looks better now. Okay, so yeah, now we have the creases back in there and it looks much better. So that is definitely how I'd roll with that. I'm actually gonna go and click into my chocolate and just turn my reflection down a little bit. It's a little hot, and that should be good. Okay, so we have our cookie made, we have our physical sky and our global illumination happening from our HDR, but I think we need a plate to put this cookie on. So what we're going to do is just grab a primitive and press C on your keyboard to make it editable and scale this down a bit. And let's just lift it up and place this in the middle of our scene. I'm going to press T to bring up my scale tool and just scale this up a little bit. And let's select our polygon mode, click the top. We'll hold Command and drag up and scale this up, and press E and hold Command and drag up one more time, and then press T and scale that up. So now if I go to my side view, you'll see I kind of have this like rectangle looking plate with a base. So I'm going to press T and drag in to do an extrude inner and just drag this down a little bit. Press T and drag in one more time, and then also lift this down a little bit to about there. So if I do Command R, it's going to calculate really slow, but this should look all right. So we're not really getting a difference. You kind of see it. It's very subtle, but that looks all right. Let's see one more time. What I'm actually going to do is throw this in a HyperNurbs and really smooth out this plate. I think that would look much better. So I'm going to select my my cube right here, and holding Shift, holding Alt, grab my subdivision surface or HyperNurbs if you're not in R15, and drop that onto our cube. Now this does not look very good. As you can see, we have very rocky segments. So I'm gonna go and turn my subdivision editor to 6 and my subdivision render also to 6. So this is gonna super smooth out our plate and give it tons and tons of polygons to work with, and this should look all right. Now the reason I used a cube and not a cylinder is because otherwise it's going to look funny with the texture we're going to add to it, because it affects it for some reason very oddly. So this looks like a plate. Wonderful, it didn't get messed up. So now that we have our plate, I'm going to call my subdivision surface plate, And let's create a quick plate texture. So I'm going to click into my material manager, click my new matte, and I'm going to call this plate. And I'm going to go into my color and go into my texture and set it to a layer. We're going to use the layer trick to create some complex colors. I'm going to go into my shader and select a noise. And in my noise, I'm going to click that and I'm going to select a, let's go with an electric texture here. And I'm going to turn my global scale up quite a bit until you get like a nice marbled look. I'm going to turn mine up to maybe, I'm going to go 600. And I'm going to click my color one and I'm going to put this to a kind of light yellow or orange color. And my second one I'm going to put to a kind of summery yellow color. And I might even turn my other one up just a touch. So I'm going for a kind of yellowy white plate. I think that looks good. So I'm going to click into my color, click into my layer and go to shader noise and click into this noise. And let's add some like specks you normally see in like nice ceramic stuff. So I'm going to just select some darker color tones for this one. Maybe even something like that. And then I'm going to turn my noise way down so we get tiny little specks. And then I'll turn my delta up and let's drop this plate texture onto our plate. This is really similar to the color of our cookie. So I might go in and tweak this top setting. I forgot we're going lighter. So I'll just change that a little bit. That looks good. And let's see how this is looking. So Command R for a quick preview. And let's see. So our plate is looking all right. I actually hate the noise that I put on the second noise. So I'm going to go back into my plate and click into my layer. And I'm just going to turn this noise down to like 11%, maybe even less, maybe like let's go 20% just so it's kind of in there, but not too much. I'm going to go into my reflection and turn my reflection on, and I'm going to turn my brightness to 13. I'm going to go into my bump, and I'm just going to add a slight change in our texture. So go to noise, click into your noise, go into your noise type, and let's grab a, what would be good? Let's drag a, click a Naki, and what we're going to do is just scale this up a ton, and this is going to add just a kind of like realistic looking bump to our object. Kind of blanked on what I was saying there. I got spaced off as I was watching. It's always very interesting to watch this global illumination thing happen. So I got very sidetracked for a second. All right, so we have our plate here. It's looking pretty good. And now what we're gonna do is, it might even be cool if we turn transparency on and maybe just turn it down and kind of like a glassy looking plate. So I actually didn't do this in my first render, so it might not look very good, but let's do brightness, set it to 61, Command R. Let's see if this looks a little bit better. This could look like total trash. I didn't really plan on doing this, so I might be telling you the wrong thing to do right now, but it might be cool. So let's see. Any second now. I always wish I had a faster computer. I'm pretty excited at work. I'm actually getting the new Mac, so that's going to be awesome. That is a fancy computer right there. And as soon as we can see just a piece, all right, it's not going to show us. I'm just going to assume it's looking all right. I might just turn my brightness to 26 so it doesn't affect it too much, but it's still happening. And let's just go and put our cookie back in the scene. So our cookie's giant and our plate is small, so obviously we have to scale up our plate quite a bit. And you could use dynamics to drop this cookie on this plate, but what I think I'm gonna do is just be lazy and just move my cookie down until it starts to intersect the plate and move it up just a little bit, so then we'll get a nice shadow underneath our cookie. And that always seems to work pretty well. All right, so now that we have our cookie set up and our basic scene set up, what we're going to have to do is go into our cookie settings, and remember how we didn't turn on our luminance channel? Let's turn on our luminance channel, go into texture, go down to surfaces, or go down to effects and click subsurface scattering, click into subsurface scattering, go to preset and click skin dark, and then set your path length to 2. So what this is going to do is as the light passes through the object, if it's 2 centimeters, the light's going to pass through. If it's anything thicker, it won't. So this is going to give it a very nice, organic, nice looking look, I guess you'd say. So let's do Command R. and see if we're done with this video or if I have to tweak this more because I put transparency on and something horrible happened. So this should look pretty good. If you'd like, we can also throw a physical renderer on, which I always use. I think it looks a lot better and it's also fast. And then I also use a depth of field, and I think that's what I did in this video, in this image right here. Yeah, I did put a depth of field on there, and I just focused on this chocolate chip. So I'll show you real quick how to do that, and then we'll probably be done with this video. So if you don't mind waiting, we're gonna wait another, hopefully a minute, and then this should be all set. If you haven't ever messed around with HDRs, this folder that you can download in the video description has like 32 or 33 different HDRs that are totally free to use, and it's just a really great way to like light your scene and make it look nice. So I recommend checking out that. If you'd like to buy an HDRI kit, I think Grayscale Gorilla has one that's pretty decent. Personally, I just use like these free ones because they work fine, and if you don't want to use them, you can just make your own HDRs inside Photoshop and do that same like alpha trick and all that. So there's definitely workarounds if you don't want to spend the money. Yeah, and also subsurface scattering does eat up a little bit of computer processing. So I have a pretty nice computer. If you're working on a laptop, I'm really sorry. I should have thought about that. But yeah, subsurface scattering makes your renders look way better. I wish this would go a little bit faster. Running out of things to say here. So if it doesn't start rendering in just a second, I'm just going to pause this video and come back when it's done. And pretty much it's always up, and there it goes, of course. All right, so it's rendering, and as you can see, hopefully, we're getting a pretty nice looking doughy texture to our cookie. We could probably add some more turbulence to it in our noise displacer, and get a little bit more bumpiness to it, so we can see it a little bit better. But yeah, definitely mess around with these settings or your bump on your cookie material, and you can start to get a really nice look. So in my cookie, I'm just going to drop this down and just turn my displacer up a little bit more, and then I'll go into my render settings and set it to physical. And in my physical settings, I'm going to turn on depth of field and create a camera with this angle. And now I'm going to just zoom out, and what I'm going to do is click my primitives and select a null object, move my null object. I'm actually going to go into my basic and set my use color. I'm going to set to on. I'm going to set my display color to red just so I can see it. I'm going to go into my object and set my display to a hexagon just so I can see what the heck I'm changing. And I'm just going to move this so it is positioned on top of this chocolate chip, because that is the one I want to focus on. So I'm going to click back into my camera, and as you can see, our null object is like targeting that chocolate chip. Just make sure this is on. Oh, it's not quite on there, so I'm going to move this over a little bit and click into my camera here. And now what I'm going to do is just pause this video and come back in a second as soon as it's rendered, and I'll show you guys what it looks like. So I'll pause that. So I'm back after cutting myself off. I forgot to tell you guys two things before you do that preview. This is what my preview ended up looking like. I think it looks pretty nice for this amount of time and just bumbling through it. But when you go into your camera settings, if you want to have a depth of field focus, go into your physical and just set your f-stop, which is like the amount of blur that'll be in the background, really low. Like the lower it is, the more blur, the higher it is, the less blur, kind of. It's like your depth of field. And then go into your object and use that null that I positioned where I want to focus, and just go into your object and drop it into your focus object, and this will automatically set the distance. I'll just show you real quick. If you go into your top view here and move your null, my depth of field is just going to change with it. So that's a nice little trick. Anyway, this was Matt from Mograph, and today we made this fresh cookie. I hope you guys liked it, hope you had fun, and hope you learned something most of all. So anyway, this was Matt from Mograph, and get your learn on. Peace out.